Chapter 2. How do I look? Cassie asked shyly. Sage took one last look in the mirror and turned to face her roommate. Beautiful, she told her. Cassie was wearing a sheer white dress embroidered with a sprinkling of silvery stardust. The waist was cinched with a wide silver sash tied in the back in a big bow. Underneath, she wore a simple glimmering silver slip. On her head was a wide headband of glowing moons and stars. Glitter slippers completed the ensemble. You look lovely too, Cassie told Sage. Star salutations, replied Sage. She felt magical. Although her usual style of dress was simple and comfortable, she absolutely loved the floor-length dress and its layers upon ruffled layers of the softest lavender fabric. She admired the sheer bell sleeves and smoothed her braids, threaded with the tiniest twinkling lights she had ever seen. The two girls headed to the Star Quad. Before she knew it, Sage was separated from Cassie, swept away in a sea of students, all smiling and laughing. It seemed as if everyone, even the girls who had had the hardest time saying goodbye to their families, was delighted to be at Starling Academy and thrilled to be in her fancy best. There were girls in ball gowns and dresses with long trains, and others with huge ruffles that spilled down their fronts. They wore jeweled tiaras, fluffy boas, and hats of all shapes and sizes, a fascinator with flowers, a towering bright pink top hat with a face-obscuring net. Sage felt like she was part of a big, happy, festive party as they all slowly made their way to the Star Quad. A girl with long, shiny hair the same shade of pink as cotton candy stumbled on her long train and momentarily clutched Sage's arm for support. "Isn't this exciting?" she cried, looping her pink shirt over her arm. Sage nodded. It was actually the very definition of exciting, in her opinion. Finally, everyone was gathered in the Star Quad. A tall, regal-looking woman stepped onto the stage. She had sparkling olive skin and bright red lips, and wore a long, flowing midnight blue gown with enormous sleeves that shimmered like the heavens at night. A single golden star sat in the middle of her forehead, but it was her headdress that really took Sage's breath away. A galaxy of stars clustered around her head, neck, and shoulders, spinning and glittering. A hush fell over the crowd. "I am Lady Stella," she said, although she needed no introduction. She was so famous as headmistress of the most prestigious school in all of Starland that her name was often in the holopapers and her face on the news. Some truly obsessed girls even dressed up like Lady Stella on Light-Giving Day, the holiday celebrating the first star day of the time of new beginnings, when Starling children dressed up in costumes and went door to door distributing newly bloomed flowers. Every student in the room had gone through the same rigorous process in the hope of attending Starling Academy. Application forms, essays, testing, recommendations. Only a small percentage of those who applied were granted an interview with the headmistress, and an even smaller percentage of girls was accepted. Starling Academy had a 100% attendance rate. Every student who was admitted chose to enroll. Every year. Lady Stella continued. "Welcome to Starling Academy and the student procession. It is a time-honored tradition for our newest students to dress in their finest clothes and walk through the campus to be received by students and faculty. We welcome you to the Starling Academy community and congratulate you on your acceptance. We thank you for joining us in the pursuit of knowledge and positive wish energy." She raised her arms. "Let the procession begin." A marching band began to play, and the girls started the procession. Teachers and the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th year students, also dressed in their finest clothes, lined up along the walkways and leaned down from windows and balconies to cheer. Sage spotted a student, dressed almost entirely in black, with accents of hot pink, standing apart from the others. Iridescent bubbles filled the air, releasing the sweet scent of glimmerberries as they popped. There was something so special, so amazing about being a part of the experience. When the new students passed the Big Dipper dorm, girls standing on the balcony cheered, showering them with flower petals that changed color as they floated down and disappeared when they hit the ground. "Welcome, new students," appeared in the sky in glittering script. Sage grinned as she took in the dizzying beauty of the scene. "I will remember this forever," she thought. After the procession, the students were led into the auditorium, where Sage settled into a plush seat. Very comfy, she thought, as she softly bounced up and down. Just then, she remembered something. Hey, where's Cassie? Sage craned her neck and looked around the room. She spotted her roommate several rows behind her, wearing a serious expression. Her arms folded tightly across her chest. Sage gave Cassie a huge wave and pointed to the empty seat next to her. But the seat was immediately filled by a girl with pale blue hair with bangs and a fringed dress of the same exact color. "Sorry," said Sage pleasantly, "but this seat is taken." "Yeah," said the girl, an unpleasant smile on her face. "By me." Sage was fuming, but she decided to let it go. She turned back to Cassie and shrugged. Everyone in the audience spoke in hushed voices and sat up very straight, well aware of the significance of that star day. Some of the girls were already whispering together as if they had been friends forever. Sage felt a stab of excitement. It was possible that somewhere in that room was her future best friend. But then she thought her future biggest enemy could be there too. The crowd burst into thunderous applause as Lady Stella stepped onto the stage. "Welcome to Starling Academy," Lady Stella began. "I hope you enjoyed the welcome procession. You are an extremely exceptional group of students. Almost every girl on our star who has reached the age of fulfillment applies for a spot in Starling Academy. You've all worked very hard to get here, and we are happy to have you." Sage felt a flush of pride. Simply sitting there in the auditorium was already an accomplishment. And now, you are about to begin the most important work of your lives. Lady Stella paused. As we all know, you are all here to begin your training to become wish-grantors. Once your education is complete, you will be on your way to collecting the precious wish energy that keeps Starland operating. She paused and nodded. And, as you also know, wishlings make many wishes, she continued. As they are about to blow out their birthday candles, Sage sniffed appreciatively as the smell of chocolate cake filled the room. "On a shooting star streaking across the sky," Lady Stella added. The lights went out, and the ceiling twinkled with starlight, a bright flash splitting the sky. She continued, "As they blow on a dandelion gone to seed." Sage reached up to touch one of the small white tufts that appeared and danced around the room. As they toss a coin into a fountain. Students squealed as they were sprinkled with cool water droplets. And I don't need to tell you that the wishes of wishling children, in particular, are the purest and produce the greatest amount of energy. The headmistress nodded and continued. As everyone knows, when a wish is made, it turns into a glowing wish orb, invisible to the wisher's eyes. The wish rapidly flies through the heavens to Starland. When the wish orb arrives, it is collected by a wish catcher, who determines whether it is a good wish, a bad wish, or an impossible wish. The good wish orbs sprout pretty sparkly stems and are brought to the wish house where they are tended to and observed by trained wish watchers. It can take anywhere from a few star mins to a few star years for a wish to be ready to be granted. That is, when it emits the most wonderful, magical glow. It is the most amazing sight to see, even if a starling has seen it 1,000 times. Then, the wish orb is presented to the appropriate starling for wish fulfillment. Once a good wish is granted, and the wish energy collected, the wish orb transforms into a unique and beautiful wish blossom. Bad wish orbs are another story. They sprout stems that don't sparkle, and are immediately transported to a special containment center, as they are very dangerous and must not be granted. Impossible wish orbs sprout stems that sparkle with an unbearably bright light. They are taken to a special area of the wish house, with tinted windows to cut down on the glare they produce. They are monitored, in the hopes that one day they can be turned into good wishes that are within our powers to help grant. Here at Star Academy, we have a state-of-the-art practice wish house where you will learn to do exactly that. Sage rolled her eyes. Every starling toddler knew that stuff. Boring! She sighed and turned around to look at Cassie. Surely she was feeling restless too. But Cassie was completely focused on the headmistress, with the same very serious expression on her face. Unable to catch her roommate's eye, Sage looked around the room. She spotted a girl whispering to her seatmate. Her orange hair was done in a beautiful upswept style. The girl must have sensed someone's eyes on her, because she turned around, caught Sage staring, and stuck out her tongue at Sage. Sage didn't know whether to laugh or be mad. She quickly looked away. What a saucy starling! Sage turned her attention back to the headmistress, who was still talking. And so, I am happy to report that this year's class is our most talented yet. Be prepared to study hard, learn a lot, and accomplish great things. And soon, you will be on your way to graduating and becoming wish-grantors. Lady Stella concluded. Are there any questions? Sage raised her hand. The headmistress shaded her eyes. Yes, she said. When do we get started? Sage asked. Heads swiveled around, and there were a couple of giggles. Sage barely noticed. And what is your name, my dear? Lady Stella asked. Sage, she replied. The headmistress smiled and nodded, as if she had known that all along. Before you know it, Sage, she said. Before you know it. Lady Stella clapped her hands together. So now, everyone take out your star zaps. You will be meeting in small groups for your formal orientation. You will receive a message telling you where you need to go. Sage placed her communicator on her lap and stared at the blank screen expectantly. I'm Group 1, shouted a girl. Me too, said another. Sage looked over the shoulder of the girl sitting in front of her. The girl's screen lit up. Group 3, it said. Then, report to Constellation Classroom 313. Sage watched in dismay as girl after girl received her assignment and headed to her classroom, some joining up with fellow classmates and chattering excitedly. Still, her screen remained maddeningly blank. Finally, it lit up. S.D. She stared at the letters, her brow furrowed. That made no sense. What does that mean? She wondered. The next message read, "Report to headmistress's office." Sage nodded. Headmistress's office? Now things were getting interesting. The girl sitting next to Sage peered down at Sage's communicator from beneath her long, pale blue bangs. "SD?" she said. "What does that stand for?" She turned to the girl next to her and elbowed her in the side, before adding snidely, "I know. Super dorky." Sage thought fast. "Actually, it means superbly delightful," she countered. The girl paused for a moment. "So doubtful," she finally crowed, obviously pleased with herself. "Well, you are most definitely not going to be my new best friend," thought Sage as she stood, pushed her way past the girl, and headed down the aisle. Sage jumped as a cold hand reached out and grabbed her elbow. She spun around, ready for another confrontation. But it was Cassie, biting her lip and looking worried. "Sage," she said, "I just got a weird message, and I'm not sure what to think." "SD?" asked Sage. Cassie's face brightened. "Yes. You too?" she asked. "Me too," replied Sage with a nod. "Superstar," Cassie said, looking very relieved. "I think it must be something good," mused Sage. Cassie blinked. I hope so," she said. "But I'm a little worried. What if we're in trouble or something?" Sage laughed. How funny. That had never even crossed her mind. "Only time will tell," she said. She leaned down slightly to link arms with her roommate, and the two walked to the headmistress's office together. It was nice to face the unknown with someone familiar by your side, even if you had just met her for the first time a short while earlier. Even if she ate strange snacks and had weird closet issues. Even then.